Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're really delighted to have you join us here. So my name is Rob Sheffield, and I'm joining you from Bristol in the UK. And let me just also welcome my co-host, that's Jorg from Berlin. Jorg, please say hi.
Hi, guys. So I'm very thrilled to be here in that interview and to develop that with Rob. And as you said, to explore several opportunities in terms of innovation, creative tension, and leadership. And I'm based in Berlin. I have a background as an artist, and I'm very much looking forward to how creativity evolves in a completely different setting.
And we also are really delighted to welcome Teena and Ajit. Paul.
Good morning, Rob and Jorg. So we are the husband and wife team on this, Giftolexia. We joined from Bangalore, and I think anytime storytelling is something we love. So great to be here.
Lovely, thank you. And we know that, I know personally that husband and wife leadership teams, because that's also what I'm in at home, sometimes that can add a certain something to the leadership itself, which we may get into. Let's find out. Okay. So, Jorg, I think let's hand over to you for the next part of this.
Yeah, all right. Thanks very much, Rob. So Teena, Ajit, so we always ask people to bring an item to the interview, and we are very much looking forward what the item is you brought. And we start with a conversation about this. Why is this meaningful? Why have you chosen that? So let's give us a look what it is.
Okay. So the items that we brought is a notebook of our youngest son when he was in class 4. So if you can see, there are a lot of errors in the page. And why this is very important for us is because, there are a lot of what if is in, when we look back in our journey. And why I've kept this and preserved this is because, it did take us 4 years after this to identify that he had a learning difficulty. But, after that, we made all that we could do. And so this is why we're showing you this other photograph, which is one of the many photographs taken by our youngest son, James, who is a final year student at National Institute of Design, a prominent design school in India. So, this is where we started our journey. And where he is today is also, kind of motivates us that, identifying children early on and giving them the right support to excel will really, really help them. And creating awareness among parents is equally important.
Yeah, thanks for that. I mean, so you're keeping the book since years and years and years. So what was the moment when you looked at the pages again and said, well, this is actually kind of a turning point to think about the situation of your son, so the kind of challenge he has to deal with, and that you discovered that this challenge is not only for him, that seems to be a challenge for many students and young children and young people. So how did this evolve?
Yeah, interesting point, right? As Teena mentioned, this was about Jamie, our youngest son, and we have the eldest is a daughter, and then there's a son, and they're academically very good. So when this came, it's typically a pretty traumatic situation when you discover your child has dyslexia, right? And interesting, about 12 to 15% of children across the world have this condition. It's actually often called a learning disability, but it's actually learning difference because they're not very amenable to text-based learning. So that's where we started when, as Teena showed, the situation that came in.
Yes. So also to add to that, see, when he was in class 3, the school counselor had told us he could have, some kind of learning difficulty. But we actually, at that point of time, we were not really aware of, different learning difficulties. Both of us at least, knew only about dyslexia. and the prominent symptom being letter reversals. So I went and checked all his notebooks. He had absolutely no letter reversals. So we thought, okay, this is a mistake that they are making. He has no issue. And I think it's partly because we were not, ready to learn further into this. Or, okay, he didn't reverse letters. We are clear, kind of thing. It took us another 4 years and another teacher who told us that, he should be screened. So I always think of he was not failing in school. And that's one of the reasons why we didn't, screen him earlier.
That is very interesting to see how to move forward from the very, very personal questions towards more, how can we put that into action and make a difference, not only for our son and the family, but more for other students as a general approach?
Jamie was very clear from about 10 years of age that he wanted to pursue design.
That might be so that the challenge is also a gift, so to say. So, and he discovered this for himself.
Yes.
Was that the reason that you started to call your initiative Giftolexia, rather than to deal with a big challenge on Giftolexia? Yeah,
that's true. It's the gift of dyslexia, right? Because typically parents, when they hear their child has a dyslexia, they like to be hands away from it. You typically prefer a normal learner. And then we started studying into it. We found that many of the gifted artists, inventors, right from Richard Branson, Steve Jobs, Agatha Christie, across domains, were dyslexic, right? And they did go through a challenging phase before they bloomed into their particular area of win. So Giftolexia is basically to say, yeah, we need to treat this as a gift. It's different. It's not easy, but we can do a lot with it.
What you said earlier around this affecting something like 12 to 15% of the population. For you, what was the timing of this shifting to potentially being a business proposition that, in a way, as you've described, that could have huge impact much more widely? How did that come about?
How the idea for this specific venture started when Ajit actually was researching something, and he came across a firm in Sweden that's doing gaze pattern based screening for early identification of children with learning disabilities. Then we kind of wanted to do something similar. We were in conversation with them for a very long time to have licensed their product. But then we realized the price point was really, really high, not affordable to Indians. So at the same time, Indian Institute of Management in Bangalore, we stay quite close to the campus, and they had a women and entrepreneurship program, which is sponsored by Goldman Sachs. So over, I think 1,500 students, we were the first batch of that. So 1,500 students women from across India had applied. And finally, they chose, they had multiple levels of learning and, boot camp and all of that. And they chose 15 women to be incubated at the institute. Institute has an entrepreneurship cell called NSR cell. So there we were incubated for a year, and we were given a stipend. So that is what really helped us take the venture forward. And being associated, with an institute, really, really helped us in networking with all the other players that we connected to, and really helped us in our journey.
Yeah, and it sounds like, in a way, there was a confluence of the personal motivation, the potential for impact, but also the timing of the opportunity, as you say, Teena, for all of these things to come together. Yeah.
Once the program started, and I was actually in the sidelines, and I was observing how Teena is taking to this whole training program for entrepreneurship. And when we tried with this Swedish company, they were quite hesitant whether India is a market. They said, let's first prove ourselves in US, UK, we'll then come to India. So we were at a stalemate that we didn't have a product, right? We did know that this was valuable. And it's actually a pretty technical product. And Teena comes with a background in MA economics. right? And I come with a lot of experience in the information technology and as a digital advisor, those areas. The way the non-tech was addressing a tech problem, because this is a fairly deep tech problem, right? I think that really came to, because a typical, if it was going to a tech person, we would have just decomposed that into problem spaces. We would have said, okay, we have this, we don't have that. So how do we put together? But I think since you didn't know that this is a really larger tech problem, I think you went in more, I think a little bit of serendipity played.
Yes. Also, I mean, like, so you were talking about the business model. So when we started, everybody was like, so you should have it like an NGO, which is a non-governmental organization. But I said, no, one thing I'm extremely clear is this is going to be a for-profit organization for multiple reasons. One is we're doing we kind of thinking of a product which is like deep tech. It takes a lot of money, and unless it is for profit, it will not sustain. It will not sustain, and we won't be able to do, cutting edge, product or technology or whatever it is by being an NGO. All the mentors at NSR Cell said, you should look at developing it in India itself, because you have a lot of options to do that. And it again, the next step, how it happened is in one of the startup meetings. They have all of these evening meetings where different startup founders talk about, or there'll be some product demo. And two things happened at one of those conferences that I went to. I met this company called Cyclops MedTech, who manufactures eye tracking devices, and they use it for vertigo and balance issues. And also I met students from a prominent engineering college in Bangalore called the Anand Sagar College of Engineering. So how this comes together is we used the equipment by Cyclops, and they were extremely, welcoming and, willing to collaborate. And I think one of the reasons is because we were incubated at NSR Cell. So they know, okay, this is not an individual coming and asking us. We still have students from the engineering college working as interns. So, we've built this collaboratively. It's not, our efforts alone. I mean, a lot of people have helped us to take this forward.
And so did you tackle the challenge or the question more from the technical side or more from the content learning education side?
As a non-tech person addressing the tech problem, I think they typically take an iterative approach, right? No is never an answer. So, and there is this receptivity to serendipity, right? In fact, what she said about the provider and then repurposing that to a dyslexia related solution. And yes, I was able to give my insights on tech, what would help. So that was definitely there. But I guess from innovation, and that's some learning we did pick up on innovation leadership too, that the non-tech has got a strong complement to the tech skills that an innovator needs.
Can you just describe to us what the technology actually does to solve the problem?
Actually, for learning difficulties or disabilities, the biggest problem is it's an invisible disability. You look at the child, you can't figure out. You interact with the child, you can't figure out that the child has a problem. So unlike other, some of the other disabilities, it's not easy to identify. So identification is very crucial, and identifying early on is, even very, very important. So that when identified early, you can start intervention. Intervention is just teaching the child in a way that the child understands. So it's basically predominantly academic intervention, where you have a one-on-one training for the child, or multi-sensory learning, which is more suitable for their way of learning. So, but if the child is not identified at all, in India, the age is between 11 or 13, and we're bringing it down to 7 or 8. As early as when children can start to read. So the technology basically is we capture the gaze pattern of children while they read text.
Okay, and how is it done?
So Jörg, let me take a step back here and say what's the traditional way of identifying dyslexia and learning disabilities, right? So they typically a child, especially to a teacher who is familiar with the child, can go through a questionnaire and look out the symptoms that are there, and then at the end there's a 1 or 2 hour of assessment they can come with a score, or they go to a clinical psychologist, right, who actually puts them through a battalion of tests. It takes 3-4 hours. It's a pretty rigorous thing.
Yeah, that's
And
required.
yeah, and then about a week, 10 days they take to come out with a report.
Much longer.
Yeah, so that's how traditionally it works. So it's a pretty long process. It involves the child spending time and all that. Now in this, the Giftolexia solution that was developed, you typically have a goggles that is put on the child's head, right?
Okay.
And basically it's got sensors which actually tracks
Infrared cameras.
Yeah, it's got infrared sensors which tracks the pupil movement of the eye.
Ooh.
And it translates that to Excel file in the computer. The application captures the data.
Wow.
And typically, I think as Teena mentioned in the beginning, the dyslexia-related kids have a lot of fixations that happen when they read, right? They pause longer. They sometimes have a reverse saccade, which is the pupil moving backwards to read the word again. So these are what is captured by the sensor, and then the data is taken from the laptop or the cloud, and we have analytics done on them. So initially it was basic analytics, but now it's a little more advanced, like machine learning capabilities, where you identify what is and it takes about
5 minutes,
5 minutes
per child,
right?
And it's really like very interesting to see when we have multiple visual formats like heat maps and graphs, and also the markers. If you look at it, it's very, very different for a child who can read seamlessly and a child who struggles to read.
Yeah, if I add to that, this was, I think, the first big breakthrough that we had 1.5 years back. There is this Maharashtra state, which is the centrally, commercially the most industrialized state in India.
Mumbai is...
and Mumbai is the capital, Bombay, the earlier one, right? And they had a high court order which said that since most children were getting diagnosed with dyslexia around 12, 13, and that's towards the edge of your high school, there isn't much time for the parent or the child to maneuver, and their career is fairly spoiled. So the court came out with the ruling that you should try to diagnose a child at 6 years old, which is about 7 years.
9, before
because
9.
The American Health Institute does say that from 5 or 6 you can capture this phenomena, through the gaze pattern too, right? And their situation was they had about 35,000 identified dyslexics within the state, whereas they had to identify about 220,000 students who were actually there, the market. So there is no way that they could do with their 3 centers. And like we said, if it takes 2-3 hours to test a child, there is no way you would have reached that thing. So that's how they got interested and said, okay, can your solution?
Yeah. So the state had a kind of a competition for startups. And the award was they would give you a government order. So we were one of the winners, and the panel was very, very impressed with the kind of solution and the time taken and all of that. So we had developed the solution in English and validated it with another screening tool. So they wanted us to develop it in Marathi, which is the local language in Maharashtra. So we developed a solution for Marathi and screened over 2,000 students in about 20 days or so. We went to almost 40 schools and screened all the children in class 3.
So let me ask you in terms of the new, sorry, Rob, I maybe interrupted you here, but I'm very keen to hear about, the winning the award, not so much about the winning, so actually the solution you presented, so the screening with the Google, so is the combining this with the data analysis in the laptop, doing this very, very quickly. So is that something from a technical point of view that was a newness for the approach, or?
It's just multiple things, because they were looking for innovative solutions for one, and this was a pressing need for the state that needed to be addressed. So I think both of those things kind of and the number of students that we could screen in a short span of time, and all of that, and that we had a validated solution for English. So I think all of that played in our favor.
Do you have a leadership team in your organization? Ajit, Teena, is it you two? Is it people beyond you? Who is the leadership team?
Right. So we are the three of us who are, I mean, Teena is the founder, CEO. I'm a co-founder. We have one more co-founder who's an analytics lead, again, working on a distributed model. But by and large, we have a lean team, and there has been a lot of interns, like Teena mentioned about the engineering college students who work on certain areas. And there are these startup ecosystem support organizations who contribute in terms of expertise. So in that sense, the core team is quite small, but we have a fairly larger periphery of people who work for a specific engagement together. And then the freelance parts. Yeah, so maybe let me add, Rob, you point out the innovation leadership part, right? So as we have been working along with Jorg and building the framework, right? So we were taking a look at that. So how you go from a self to the team, to the organizational, to the network. And we try to reflect in terms of our context. And what we saw was, like, although we have been in corporate life for a long time, and that definitely fits very well with that part, when we're in a startup mode and we are a little more fluid, I think in many ways the network intersects at different points to give you the team, the organization, and other capabilities, right? And we were seeing that happening, like we did mention about the internship, but I did find that, which I was sitting on the ringside taking a view, that the women entrepreneurship team, there were about 15 and there's a total larger group of 50. So they interact a lot on social media on the entrepreneurship challenges, issues, how do you go about it. There's a lot of difference in the way a women entrepreneurship team itself works, right? Which I was surprised to see because, you know, we've been a part of a lot of entrepreneurship. So I'm saying a network of a women network is one, is quite different from the other. A network with interns, students coming in, you know, there's a lot of fresh energy, there's a lot of ideas, those areas come in. And there is also this network of other startups, the startup ecosystem, right? So they all contribute in different ways.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean,
go Jorg, go.
Yeah, I mean, very fascinating to listen to the network approach. I mean, so for my understanding or my question is really, it's not simple, first of all, to organize a network, to make it efficient, to work on a specific topic, but also there's a matter of leadership. And so this is something I would like to emphasize and listen more so in depth. So what is the moments, how you weave the web, how you inspire, how you give directions, and who is actually going to do this? Are this the three of you, or is it differently, or is it done by the network itself? So, because these are the tiny little things, so which creates a difference, so to say.
Yeah, that's true. I think we have been interacting at different network levels, maybe a lot more. Teena has been on it. But what we found is it's not enough to be in a network, right? The leadership traits required to actually, you know, bring fruitful outputs out of that needs a little difference. And by thinking on these frameworks, what I've seen is, if you want to get something out of it, you have three areas, I would say. One is shaping the network, right? You need to come out with, okay, this is the scope of challenge or possibilities that is there, right? You shape the conversation. And then you need a lot of sensing to be done, because there are some very valuable input that may come in because different people in the network come at different directions, right? And then you as a leader of the network, to get the benefit, you need to have a seizing capability, right? You need to identify that value that is coming in the network and then persist to bring some value out of it. And all of this with an underthread of a little bit of altruism, I would say, right? Because you need to give and you need for you to take. So I guess these are also quite important components when you are trying to do leadership there.
It's really fascinating because, in a way, in my mind, as you're talking both, it's almost like you have a kind of ecosystem of different networks.
Yeah.
right?
Very
And
strong, very strong.
from a sense of view of getting some coherence towards your goals with those differences, how do you try to do that? How do you try to maintain some alignment towards your goals as you've described?
Right. So in some ways, the networks align because of certain values that are there, right? A women entrepreneurship network has a certain characteristics to it. I mean, you have people who have been professionally employed, you have housewives who are coming into entrepreneurship, you have all variations, but they all align with a principle that, yes, we want to bring something valuable to society, for profit or non-profit, whatever it may be. And then when you have the interns and the students network who is working with you, they have a different motivation levels. But again, they are very clued into bringing value for them and for the organization in terms of, is it something interesting to work with? Is it something challenging that is there? Is it something that I can do a value in? So like I said about the shaping part, you may need to align that, but you may need to define the problem or the possibility very clearly for them to get.
So also to add to that, see, when it comes to our interns, so we have been working with them for over 2-3 years. So most of the interns work with us for about 12 to 15 months, like a year plus. And all of the interns who worked with us have been placed extremely well. It really helps in their placement because of the kind of work that they're doing. And in a startup, I think they really get a deeper look at, they get their hands dirty. So they have a deeper understanding, and it really has helped, all of them get extremely good placements. So that kind of gives us the next set of interns. And also the first set of 3 interns from the college who worked with us, they developed a small app for us to so we were in the initial stages. So we were, so that the app is basically for any learning content to be put in. So we gave the kids our mandate and gave them a, we made them bosses of their own, outcome. So I think this is what has always worked in our teams. So each team member is a leader on his or her own, self. So
Yeah.
it is always, it is not it was never, my project. It was always our project.
Actually, from a leadership perspective, what's one thing maybe that Teena brings that is just something Teena can do that others can't?
I think the overarching purpose is something that really motivates, because there are many times when things are really difficult, things are not panning out as you planned. And I guess that energy drawing in is like the notebook that was shared.
Yeah.
If you could make a difference, then there are a lot out there who really can make a difference. So that is definitely one big thing. Plus, I guess she's an excellent learner. So I think she's learning on the go.
Oh. Teena, what would you say about Ajit? So what is his leadership style?
So his he's very strategic, when it comes to anything that we're trying to do. Sometimes I'm very practical, I look at sometimes don't spend enough time strategizing what to do. I just start doing, and then okay, let's build a strategy along. But I know Ajit's always looking at he helps me go a little way, and then he will say, okay, now let's see what needs to be done, so that I think that's the biggest strength. So in that way, I think we complement each other.
So Ajit and Teena, thank you so much for joining us, sharing your thoughts. It's been really, really fascinating, and we would love to stay in touch with you as the story continues.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been great. Like Ajit said, it also gives us the opportunity to reflect.
Yeah, and I have to say thank you as well in terms of, so I saw the item, and so somehow the item was the start of the whole story, and now it's nearly a movement. So thanks for that.